Good evening, and welcome to another Mothman podcast. We are your number one source for sci-fi and paranormal podcasts. Also be listening for podcasts from Moth and Flame. You'll be hearing about hypnotherapy and mediumship.
And also, please like and subscribe and comment on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, and more. And you can find out a lot more about our services on mothmanpodcast.com.
Good evening, Amanda.
Good evening. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Hey, what time of the year is it?
It's Halloween time.
Our time of the year, right?
That's right.
So this
best time of the year.
This podcast is going to be on our Halloween editions. We're going to have a couple that we'll be putting out over the month of October, talking about the different things of Halloween. Amanda, how did Halloween come about?
There's a couple different theories of where it exactly came from, but the most common is that Halloween was originally a Celtic festival called Samhain. And I know I'm pronouncing that wrong because Celtic words are not pronounced how they're spelled, but it's spelled Samhain. And people would light bonfires and they would wear costumes to ward off the ghost. And that kind of got adopted by the Catholic Church at some point because November 1st is All Souls Day. So they kept All Hallows Eve for the day before as kind of like the last day you could misbehave before the season of Advent, which is the weeks right before Christmas, before that time started, because that's like one of the most holiest times in the church calendar. So you wanted to be on your best behavior during that time and have like a proper demeanor. But before that, you had one last night to really cut up. And I was just telling Daryl, who's going to the place where I grew up in Italy.
And I will be there November the 1st when it starts.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm totally jealous. So I grew up there, and I was telling him that I remember Halloween wasn't so much like a dress-up kind of festival, but it was more of a like a last day to misbehave and throw firecrackers at people and that kind of thing.
So that's our October the 31st.
There you go.
You know, when you think of Halloween, one of the first things that pops in your mind is the pointed nose, the pyramid-type hat.
Yeah.
We're talking about witches.
Yes.
And, witches are known all around the world.
This is true.
And but when we think about them here, everybody kind of goes back to the Salem witches.
Yeah.
And the Salem witch trials took place back in Massachusetts between February of 1692 and May of 1693.
And we live near the city of Winston-Salem. That's not where the witch trials. I always get that question. Like, oh, is that where the witch trials happen? No, that's Salem, Massachusetts.
There you go. But there was over 200 people accused.
Yeah.
And 19 of them were found guilty and were executed.
And one dog.
One dog and 5 men.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember.
I didn't know that.
There was 5 men, and the youngest was 5 years old, but she wasn't executed.
Oh, my God.
She was put in jail.
Still, can you imagine incarcerating a 5-year-old for witchcraft?
And the scary thing is, you better not have a wart on your face or your body because
they would.
You're a witch.
Exactly.
Some of the notorious names for the witch trials was Bridget Bishop, and Sarah Good, Suzanne Martin, Martha Carrier, and Martha Corey. And what was interesting to me on that one was some of their ages. And hold on a second here. I've got that. And some of the ages were like, some of them were in their 40s. A couple were like 71.
Oh, wow.
1 or 2 were in their 80s. So, that was these trials, took place during that period of time, and apparently, I guess witchcraft is the work of the devil. Is that what they were talking about?
That's what they believed, and I was reading up on this a little bit last night, and I was reading that a lot of these women were accused not of even physically doing anything, but that they would send their ghost to like breathe bad air on people or touch people when they were in their houses. And it was people just like feeling like, oh, I felt like I got touched by something. Oh, it must be, Miss Goody's ghost. And it was just awful what these poor women and some men went through. And it did seem to be kind of a crime against women in a way. Like if you were a woman who was outspoken in society, or if you were a woman who kind of was like opinionated or didn't attend church every single Sunday, those were the sorts of women that were being accused. It's just awful to think that being a strong woman could be what gets you killed.
Well, where did do you know anything about where all the, you see them in there, the kitchen cooking up all these spells and do you know anything about how that came about?
From what I understand, the whole thing originated with a slave from the Caribbean islands named Tituba. And Tituba was teaching the girls where she lived, which was the first 3 girls that were accused. She was teaching them sort of like African dance and some of her folk potions, like, oh, you have a zit. Here, I have this cream that, I've concocted in the kitchen kind of thing. She was teaching them very practical, like folk medicine and dance and just stuff from her own island culture. And they just assumed that it was all a work of the devil because Tituba wasn't a baptized Christian like everyone else. And so they blamed her for corrupting the girls.
Okay, so they would create these spells to ward off or to create something, or
it was mostly just folk remedies, from what I understand, in the beginning, anyway.
Yeah, and so Grandma used to do that.
Right. Oh my gosh, I have a story about that. I got to tell you later.
Okay, what do you call a male witch?
A warlock.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was quite a few warlocks back then.
Yeah.
Like I said, 5 of them was reported to have been executed. Do you know there was nobody that was burnt at the stake? Everybody sees the witches.
I've heard that.
But they were all taken to a hill, and they were all hung. So that's that was I guess a folktale about them being burned.
Right. Yeah, that was more of that happened more in Europe in the Middle Ages kind of thing.
Yeah, and the kings would burn people.
Yeah, it wasn't really an American witch thing. Now, get this. When I lived in Salem, Massachusetts for a year, which was, I didn't know I could be that cold. It was so cold there. And the sun didn't come up till, 11 o'clock in the morning in the winter. It was horrible. But we lived on the top of the hill where they thought those witches were hung. And then recently they found that wasn't the actual location. That hill was called Gallows Hill.
Yeah, Gallows Hill was near the town of Salem, Massachusetts. So, that's where, actually, there was 20 people that have been that actually died because out of the 19, one also died in jail, so they made it 20. But it was very sad that the belief back then, and a lot of myths came out of there, and like the lucky 7.
Oh, really?
And do you know where that number came from?
No.
It's because of a religious belief that it took God 7 days to create the earth. So the seventh day and the letter 7 go along with the thought that it's religious, that it's a good number because it took God 7 days. And you know where the number 13 come from?
No.
13 was supposed to be the 13th, was the when Judas came to the table, he was the 13th person that came to the table at the Last Supper.
So he was unlucky.
He was unlucky, and so that's where that number comes from. To me, 13's lucky.
Yeah, you keep saying that. Why do you say that?
Because I've had the number 13 in my life, most of my life. My number on the football team was 13.
Wow.
My employee number has a 13 in it now that I've been working for almost 20 years. It's just been one of those numbers where I associate it with good things. Maybe
because people fear it. And like, you know,
well, it's
you're bringing that on to yourself.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
thing.
just a change of mind. See, my mind's positive on 13, so it doesn't bother me. Friday the 13th doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Now, I did have a supervisor one time that when he pulled up to the gas pumps, and if it stopped on 13, he'd put another gallon on the ground. He would run it up to 14. Well, he would not stop at 13. He would not come to work on Friday the 13th.
You're kidding.
Not coming to work at all.
Now, that's extreme.
Now, in his behalf, he did one time have to come in because we had a special operation. And it was Friday the 13th. Sure enough, we were taking down a bad guy who was a drug dealer. He ran up to the car, and the guy started to crank the car up, and he reached in, and the guy got the car cranked. He rolled his arm up in the window and drug him down through the parking lot.
Oh, my God.
And so he finally tore out and
he's like, I shouldn't have come to work.
and I pulled up beside him, and I said, "You all right?" And he says, "You get that son of a..." So I took off after him, and we did get him. But
oh, my God.
yeah, but after that, I don't think we could have got him back to work. I don't care what. We just had to cancel it. He's done. Yeah, he'd retire. If we made him come back on the 13th, he would have retired. So. And you know the reason they won't put a 13th floor on a hotel or something like that is because they're afraid that all these people with these
that they won't stay on the
13th floor. So they just don't.
Well, like Joe Rogan says, even if you call it 14, it's still 13.
A rose is a rose, no matter what.
Exactly.
Right? So, well, that's some of the things about witches, and then I guess because of the myths, we always associate a witch with something bad.
Yeah.
But then we have the Hallmark Channel, and they have the good witch.
You do, and you've got a lot of good witches through TV now.
Right.
But can we go back to the witch trials for a
second?
Sure,
go back.
I just wanted to mention, I don't know if you've heard this before, and I don't know what you think about this theory, that they think that the whole witch hysteria was caused due to some wheat that was stored, and it developed ergot fungus on it. And you can get ergot fungus even on rice, barley, any kind of grain. And basically it makes you hallucinate. It makes you paranoid, makes you a little nuts. So it doesn't kill you. It's not like a deadly fungus, but it does mess with your head a lot. And it especially makes people hallucinate. Yeah.
Peyote?
Could be. I don't know. I heard that and I was like, that does kind of give you a rational, but it was also very paranoid times,
right,
where people were looking for spiritual explanations for common occurrences.
This just doesn't make any sense to me, but one of the tests to see if you were a witch was a swimming test. If you were accused of being a witch, you were dragged in the nearest body of water, stripped to their undergarments, bound, and then tossed in to see if they could sink or float.
Yeah, it had to do with they believed that water was pure, and if you sunk, the water was kind of accepting you to kill you. But if you could float or swim and get back out, then the water had rejected you because you're also pure. which doesn't make sense, but
well, there was a lot of other tests they used, but I'm not familiar with them. There's prayer test, the touch test, the witch cakes. I don't know what that one
is.
And then witch
Sounds
marks.
tasty.
Witch marks was the ones that the warts and things
warts,
like
and
that.
if you had a mole or any kind of birthmark.
It's a lot of interesting facts out there on witches, but it's one of those things where you're I guess it's all in what you want to believe when it comes to anything else. There are some practicing witches right now.
Oh yeah, there really are.
And then out of the witch came the pagans and other religious beliefs, and I believe
Wiccans.
The Wiccans, but the pagans, that's defined as anything other than the Christian.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So and the last poll that was run in the United States, there's 340,000 that declare that they're pagans.
Pagan religion.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that the worship of the devil, or
no? It
or just
really
anything,
isn't. I saw an interview with she's a declared witch, and she was talking about, no, we're not Satanists. We don't even worship any kind of like negative deity. They do have a pantheon of deities, so they have more than one. They have anywhere from like 6 or 7 to hundreds of deities that they worship and ask for help with their spells and that kind of thing. But they're definitely not the same as a Satanist, and the Satanists don't claim them either. They're like, they say we're not the same as witches. Satanists don't believe in any deity except
is that like an atheist?
Yeah, pretty much. Satanists are just atheists.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of psychopaths.
And you mentioned Wicca.
Wicca is a nature worship. They're pagan, in the sense that they're not Christian, and they're nature worshipers. So they believe that their gods are tree gods and forest gods and water gods, and anything you find in nature, they believe that there's a deity behind it. So they do a lot of their worship, quote unquote, worship services out in nature, where they sing and gather in circles and that kind of thing.
Is that a Mother Nature type deal?
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. Now, I don't speak as an expert on these things, so I could be wrong. But as far as what I understand, they believe in like Mother Nature, but also like Father Nature and that kind of thing.
Okay. You do know that they did find that Massachusetts did reimburse some of the family members because later on they declared that these witch trials were a witch hunt.
We're insane.
That's where the witch hunt come from.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really mean they're after anything. They're just trying to find something. So that's they said that, and they do still have events in and around that area.
They certainly do. I've seen them headed toward gatherings. There's a kind of a famous local witch there named Meg Cabot. That's a really old name, Cabot. And her family's been there forever, and she's kind of a chief witch in the area. And what's funny is, like, how do I know of her? Because she shopped at the same grocery store I did on the same night of the week. So we would go on Sunday nights, and she was always there on Sunday nights. So it's kind of, I tried really hard not to stare at her because she had like long white hair, and she wore a long red robe most of the time. And she's just really interesting looking. But you don't approach celebrities.
So she considers herself, or is the public consider
The public definitely considers her a celebrity.
Okay. So you don't want to mess with that. I was looking for the connection between 777. Are you familiar with that?
All I know is like 6. The number 6 is called in the Bible the number of man. And 666 is the number of the beast, which means he's 3 times just an ordinary man. And 7 is the number of completion or holiness. It's the number of God. And so 777 would be like the number of the Trinity, I think.
Okay, and that varies from 666.
Exactly. 6, because you have to also think of the book of Romans where it says, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So 6 comes just short of 7, which is the number of God.
Okay. Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, it says God's number 7 over the devil's number of 666.
Yeah.
That's a definition. Wow. How do
I know that?
No,
My dad.
I'm talking about how do we create these?
It goes back to numerology from the Torah that was kind of also like there was like a sort of mystical Jewish religion that was parallel to the main religion, and those rabbis were really into numerology, and they had the entire alphabet down to numbers, the Hebrew alphabet, that is.
Right. And there was something that I read one time about some numbers going back to going back to China and some of their beliefs in the, I guess.
They're big into numerology.
Yeah, I guess that's where that came from.
Now you're going to Italy. Are you going to be anywhere near that town that we talked about a little bit, Benevento?
No, I guess we're flying into Venice. So
okay.
I'm going to be
all up north mostly.
Yeah, north of that.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit that's where
now
witches that really want to become witches go to. That's their college, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's
a world
famous. Exactly.
Do they get on the magical train and disappear into a wall?
Probably. I mean, who knows? I don't remember the town because I was about 2 years old when my parents went there, and my dad said he's pretty sure they left us with a babysitter. And my parents were looking for another town to move to because we moved to a different town about every 2 years in Italy. And
now he was on missionary work.
Yes,
right?
yeah. My parents were missionaries, and so they were looking at like what towns really need us to help them out right now. And they visited several, but they had gone to this town Benevento, which means like good wind. So it's like a friendly wind or a good wind coming through. And my dad said basically the town, if you've ever seen medieval Italian towns, they're on the top of a hill. And the road will wind around the hill all the way to the top. And it was one of these type of medieval towns. And my parents said that they stopped on the outside of the town and they asked someone something like, how long does it take to get to the top or something like that. And they were warned, you don't want to go up there. And my parents were like, why not? And they just were warned, you don't want to go up there. And so my dad was like, okay, whatever. And so he said the minute he started driving toward the top of the hill, the temperature changed. He said it was by like about 20 degrees. Like it was warm sunshine down in the valley. They got onto the side of the hill and it was just freezing. And they kept going to the top. And he said it was the strangest town he's ever been in. No one was friendly. No one would talk to them. No one wanted them there. Excuse me. And he could feel a presence. I know.
And now, he went into some churches and stuff there too, right? And there was some weird stuff that happened there. Do you remember that?
I don't really remember. I don't remember that.
I just like
remember
everything was kind of black and.
Yeah, he did say that. Oh, that's right. He said that when you walked into the churches, like there was a main cathedral type church at the top, and all Italian churches have frescoes painted along the walls. They're actually really beautiful. A lot of gold, a lot of precious stones and everything like that. And he said that instead of like happy shepherds and, smiling Jesus with children around him, you didn't see that. Instead, everything was very darkly painted with shadows and just a darkness to the art in the cathedral, which he found really, really odd. And they just felt like so unwelcomed by the people because they were just so unfriendly, but also just this strange presence in the whole town. And they didn't stick around too long. I think they were there maybe an hour or two. And then they left, and they said going back down the hill, things started warming up again. They got to the valley, and it was like sunshine again. And they just said, well, we're not going to be taking our family into that village.
Wow. We need to do a whole podcast just on
I know.
that one city.
Yeah.
But no, I'm looking forward to my trip to Italy, and hopefully I can speak to some people there that might
Well, there's lots of witches all over Italy. It's not unusual for every village to sort of have their own resident witch. I
guess that's where witch doctors come from.
Yeah, kind of like that. It really is. I know my mom, she used to do the ladies' hair because she was a hairdresser by profession. And so she would invite ladies over and she would say, we can do your hair, whatever. And one lady had taken off a pair of earrings, and my mom was sharing the gospel with her, and the lady said, she said, where are my earrings? And my mom said, well, we set them over on the counter. And she said, don't let your daughters touch them. And my mom was like, well, why? They're not going to touch them. They don't mess with things. And the lady said, because I've had those blessed by a witch, and when I took my earring off, this presence that's been sitting on my shoulder went off with the earring, and I can feel that he's gone right now. And it was just, freaked my mom out.
So why do you wear the earrings?
Because she was told that it would bring her luck and a boyfriend and good things in life.
So the boyfriend was sitting on her shoulder?
Yeah, I don't know. She said it was like a little devil that always sat on her shoulder.
I think I'd go to a different witch.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing about Halloween and witches is just, it's amazing how we as a culture develop into these myths and then kind of grow around them and kind of create them into something that we want them to be. We get Walt Disney doing the movies on witches, and
you have cultures where witches are a really bad thing, and you have cultures like America where it's like, okay, that's just another religion in a way,
Yeah. But if you go to Barnes and Nobles or any bookstore, you're going to find books on witches, witchcraft, and how to do spells. Yep. And the only thing I could advise, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it.
And mediums aren't witches.
Yeah,
I get that confusion a lot. I'm a medium. I'm not a witch.
So, yeah, that's a big difference there.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't seen Amanda sitting around and boiling anything in the kitchen.
Something in a cauldron.
Although I'm thinking about boiling some soup here. Anyway, that's our podcast on witches for tonight. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you'll continue to listen to our Halloween series, and we'll be covering some other. We always cover the ghost angle. So, so thank you for listening, and have a great week.
Good night.
And good night from Mothman Podcast. We hope you enjoyed tonight's episode.
And don't forget, like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, and more. And take a look at our website, mothmanpodcast.com, to find out more about our services.